now. Let me see here. Okay. Okay. I think my camera's working. Yes. Alrighty. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Tabitha Robinson. As you maybe know, but in case you don't, I'm the pre-health advisor at Kennesaw State University. So what y'all can do is if you want to leave your mic and your camera off for now, that's totally fine. But I will be doing a presentation and I will take questions as well. If you have questions during the presentation, you're welcome to ask, or you can ask at the end, either way. So I will go ahead and get that started. So I'm going to share my screen with y'all now. I'll do this. And then can y'all let me know, you can either use the thumbs up icon or you can unmute yourself. Can you see the PT presentation? Yes. Perfect. Okay. First, since we're virtual, I won't do show of hands. But you can use the thumbs up icon or unmute yourself. No, we're a small group. Let's do this. Unmute yourself. Can everyone tell me what their major is?
I major in exercise science.
Okay.
Exercise science.
I'm a biology major. Mm-hmm.
I'm a psychology major.
What? Sorry, say again?
Cheryl is a psychology major and political science minor.
Okay, so psychology, biology, and exercise science. Awesome. And then, are y'all freshmen, sophomore, junior, senior?
Freshman.
Okay.
Sophomore.
Mm-hmm. Junior. Okay.
Cheryl
Any
is
freshmen,
senior.
Senior? Oh, literally. Okay, we have a freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior. Awesome. Okay, we have a little of everything in here today. So what I'm going to be talking about today is planning for physical therapy school. So I'll go over a little bit about general pre-health advising information pretty quick at the beginning, and then I'm going to dive right into PT program planning. I will have a copy of this. I will be emailing y'all hopefully by tomorrow afternoon because there are links in here that I want y'all to make sure you have access to, because I'll be referencing a few things, different websites and resources, and so you will have access to that as well. So I'm going to start with what is pre-health advising. So you've got kind of like the general mission up there, but it's like, you can read it there. But essentially the goal is to help students become competitive applicants for the professional health program they're planning to pursue. In y'all's case, PT. There are currently around 1,600 pre-health students at Kennesaw State University. That's not including nursing. Nursing is the one thing as far as a career goal that I don't advise for. I advise students across all majors who want to go into healthcare for any profession, but specifically the ones I see most often, the 6 largest, are the ones you see on your screen there. So med school, dental school, PT school, pharmacy, PA, and veterinary. But if it is something where you ever decide maybe PT is not for me, but I'm thinking about PA school or occupational therapy school or something else, as long as it's not nursing for a profession and a career, regardless of your major, I can help with it. If you decide nursing is right for you, it's a great profession, but there are well-starred college advisors that do all the assistance with that specific, like major stuff, but also career planning. Some of the resources available through pre-health advising today, as a prime example, information sessions on specific professions. But also I do a lot of different things from like professional panels. So I have alum from KSU who are now practicing doctors or PT students or whatever the case might be. I try to get together different panels each semester so that we have an opportunity to interact and learn from those folks who went on to do that profession or are now students in that profession program, health profession program. There's obviously advising appointments y'all are welcome to do. They're about 30 minutes. You can schedule them through the website where you got today's info session as well. Drop-in advising for generally quick questions is available most weeks. There's different workshops, a whole bunch of different things. Most of these you can find on the Owl Life website. And as I add things, which I do on a regular basis, probably weekly basis, whether it's for a week out or 4 months out, just check every so often to make sure you're not missing any important events or information. So I'm going to start with what is pre-health advising. So you've got kind of like the general mission up there, but it's like, you can read it there. There are around 1,600 pre-health students at Kennesaw State University. That's not including nursing. There are currently around 1,600 pre-health students presentation, or can you see Owl Life where I've got the website up?
Yes.
Yeah. Y'all can see Owl Life? Yes. Great. Okay. So I don't need to go over everything extensively today because I want to focus heavily on PT. And y'all have at least seen this once before because you're at info session. But I want to highlight a couple things quickly. The gallery here, please check this, periodically. As I receive things, which I do on a regular basis, from external, health profession programs, whether it's a PT school or something else, a med school, vet school, whatever else, maybe about like a post-bac master's. If it has a flyer attached, we even like if it's a scholarship opportunity for health profession students, this is where it's going to be. So make sure you do check it every so often because this just pulls a few of the images. It does not show everything. So you have to actually go into the gallery to see what they are. The appointments I referenced and the drop-ins. Right here is where you can access the appointment availability and the drop-in availability. If this is your first interaction with anything for health today and you've not done this form before, please make sure you do this today. This is just how I know that you're planning to go to PT. The number I referenced, about 1,600, that number comes from students who completed this to let me know what their current profession is that they're planning to do. And so if you don't do this, I don't know to take into account that maybe we need more PT events because we've got more PT students, or things like that. And so make sure it is something where if you filled it out before, but originally, you were thinking something else like med school, you can just do it again, and then I'll have the updated information. Or if you've never filled it out, go ahead and make sure you do that. Events, again, you found them because you're here today. But as I mentioned, I do periodically add additional things. For example, this was not here until yesterday afternoon as the dates got finalized. Last week I had an additional PT program that'll be visiting spring. They're supposed to do one last week, but she had a lot of her schedule and mixed up the times. And so we got them rescheduled. As I get any other program scheduled, you will continue to see those here. So make sure y'all keep checking these to see what all those events are and to see if it's something you can attend. Every event is typically free for all students, and they're always free, but also open to any student with no cap as far as, you could show up the day of and not RSVP and be fine. There's very few things that are RSVP required, and there are probably events that are more geared towards NED, and so it wouldn't necessarily be something you'd probably jump right to anyway. When in doubt, though, if you're like, I don't see a way to RSVP, you can always email me and ask if it's something that any student can show up to. But again, of all the 55, honestly, plus events that I've got scheduled between this past August and through next May, I think 2 or 3 were capped at like 30 students. Everything else is open for anybody. Last couple things I want to point out before I move on to the PT stuff. These 3 links here under the documents. Please make sure you look at these. This particular one, the required courses for professional health degree programs. I will be talking about those in just a minute here, but I want you to know where you can go and find them again later as well. Can you see the document in the screen now, not Owl Life? Yes, no? Okay, perfect, heard a yes. So this is where you can find all the courses that are generally required for certain health profession programs. And this is current. So I go through generally every summer and do another review of, if it's something like med, there's hundreds. So I review at least generally all the Southeast as well as additional programs, spread out throughout the U.S. Something like optometry, there's not hundreds. And so I review every program across the U.S. All that to say, this is something where it is accurate because I've reviewed based on, a thorough, survey and review of profession programs at the time to update for next year. So the courses you see listed that are typically required for PT, this is up to date and accurate. This is, as you'll see, typically required, common required, meaning if you're planning to go to PT school, you probably are going to need these courses regardless of where you're applying. It doesn't mean they're the only courses. Depending on where you're applying, there are likely other things they're going to ask for, maybe, or rather recommend, but this is at a minimum, so I want you to know where you can find that. You can also do the Explore Health Professions if you're like, I don't know if PT is for me, but what can I do because I want to work in healthcare? Great option, a ton of events to explore those things, and you can find all the health-related student orgs here as well. This will be another thing that'll be updated, not necessarily, it's not PT relevant, but I know we're going to have a pre-pharmacy club starting soon. One thing you will not see is pre-PT club. So, there's a fun fact for y'all. If it's something where you love the idea of starting a pre-PT club, you've got an opening in the space to do that. That's all I wanted to cover on Owl Life. I wanted you to know where you can find everything, but I'm going to go back to PT presenting now. So, any questions on that before I go back to the presentation? Okay. If you think of questions, again, feel free to let me know what we're going through. So, what I want to start with PT information today is, why do you want to be a physical therapist? Now, you don't have to tell me this in a specific moment. If someone wants to share, that'd be great. But the reason I want to start with this question is because it's really important that you kind of leave this that you keep this at the forefront of your mind as you're going through. Getting into a health profession program is not an easy feat. It is time consuming. It can be stressful. It can be very rewarding. And so it is not something where it's going to be based on academics alone. That is one small part. There are a lot of other experiences, which we'll talk about today, that you're going to need to plan for. You're going to need to have good time management to keep it all, doing all of it successfully, doing all of it really well, to help yourself stand out, look for opportunities to be a leader. So you want to make sure that, one, this is something you really want to do, but also you can remind yourself of this is something that you really want to do to keep yourself motivated and driven and pushing forward, even when you feel like you've got a lot on your plate, so that you can continue to push through it to reach that goal of being a competitive applicant for a physical therapy program, to then reach the goal one day of being a physical therapist. Does anyone want to share in here why they want to be a physical therapist? And there's no right or wrong answer. So, unless it's just to make money, that's not a great answer. But I mean, hopefully there's something else with that too. Anybody want to share?
I want to be a physical therapist because I start to watch a lot of sports, and I start to watch a lot of these injuries that some of these athletes have, and I became curious about what part of the body they injured, and what can impact them in their game.
Awesome. That's a great reason. I know a lot of people have the interest within either coming from their own experiences as an athlete, or observing others, whether it's friends, family, or just being really involved in sports, even watching them, and so I know that does drive a lot of people to PT, so that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Does anybody else want to share? No? Okay. Alrighty, we'll move on. So, as far as what PT looks like in the U.S. for PT education programs, there are hundreds in the U.S. I do not have a specific number for you. It's somewhere between, I think, 250 and 300, though. Of those, there are 8 in Georgia. You can find where those programs are across the U.S. and in Georgia through some of these websites I've got listed here, like the Commission on Accreditation in Physical Therapy Education. I'm actually going to pull it up real quick. There's actually a filter you can go to. And so, can y'all see my screen still where it's got CAPT open?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So right on top, if you click, and again, you'll have access to these links because I'm going to send you the presentation. You go Directory of Programs. Then you can scroll down. You'll want to view accredited PT programs. And there you are. You've got the massive map right there. So we want all PT. From here, it's great. You can use the filter if you're like, I really want to stay in Georgia if I can. Or maybe you're from another state and you're like, I kind of want to go back there. You can go ahead and start filtering by state. And so I'm going to use Georgia, obviously, for the example for today. So you can see all the accredited programs within the state of Georgia. So again, I mentioned we've got 8. Some of y'all may be familiar with some of them might be new, as far as if you haven't heard of it. But Augusta, Brenau, Emory, we've got Georgia Southern, Georgia State, Mercer, PCOM, which is also Philadelphia College of Medicine, and then University of North Georgia. But it does make it really easy when you're going through trying to figure out, where do I apply? How many do I apply to? Which we'll talk about here in just about 60 seconds, So do know that is a resource available, and it's one where you don't have to rely solely on Google, because sometimes it's like, where do I find the list? This is going to take you directly to the page where you can find the list of all the accredited programs. With applying to PT schools, typically I recommend about 4 to 8 schools, and that's kind of normal. Now, sometimes people have a heart set on maybe North Georgia or something else, which is great. Of course, apply there. But when applying to professional health programs, you're never going to apply to just one. So you will be applying to multiple. I like to give an example. So med school, people typically apply to about 15 or more. Something like pharmacy school, maybe about 4 or 5. PT school, 4 to 8. So you do want to give yourself multiple programs you're applying to try and get into. With the application, it looks different than what y'all probably are used to. You're KSU students right now, so you've obviously at some point gone through KSU's website and applied to be a KSU student because you're here. However, you may have also applied to maybe Georgia State or, I don't know, Augusta, or maybe Georgia Southern or something, and you went through their websites, did the application to apply for college. It's different with PT school. And this is consistent in case you ever switch to a different profession for health, with all health professions. They use a CAS, C-A-S, Central Application Service. So the one for PT school is called, as you see in the bottom corner there, PT CAS. It opens in June every year, and that's to try and get into a program that begins either the next summer or fall. Depending on the school, it will either be a summer start or a fall start program. So, for example, students who are applying to PT CAS, let's say this upcoming June of 2024, they'll go in, they'll add all their information, their grades, their experiences, their shadowing, personal statement, if they took the GRE, anything like that. They'll add all in, complete it all out, all that, and then they will choose which PT schools that are accredited in the United States are going to receive that completed, essentially whole package of an application, and that's who they all receive the exact same thing. So again, of course there are fees for all of this, but generally as far as kind of thinking about what that looks like, it's kind of weird to wrap your head around if it's new to you, but that is typically what you'll be looking at moving forward. So keep that in mind too. It's nothing that affects you now, but it is something that's helpful to know early on because it can be confusing otherwise if the first time you find out about it is when you try to apply. With your academics as an undergrad student, I know, I'm sorry y'all, I've got like something in my eye. I know we've gotten here biology, 2 exercise science, and then a psychology major. All those majors are perfectly fine to do. You do not have to be a certain major to get into, honestly, any health profession, unless your nursing major to be a nursing career, which is out of my wheelhouse, but I do know that much. And so it will be no disadvantage to you or advantage to you if your major was biology, psychology, exercise science, English, history, education, accounting, civil engineering. It literally doesn't matter, and it's not going to be like, oh, well, this person was exercise science, this one was English, they've got a boost. They don't care. You need to choose a major that's right for you, because that's going to help demonstrate who you are. It's also going to help you be more successful because you're choosing a major that you're interested in, that you really like. There are specific academic requirements, which I talked about a minute ago, and I'll be talking about here on the next slide. They don't care how those are done. So if it's something where it happens to be part of your degree requirements, great. If they are not in your degree requirements, great. You just got to get those done. It doesn't matter how, though, whether it's a degree requirement or not, as long as you complete the courses. As far as your schedule goes, you should, when at all possible, be a full-time student in fall and spring. Show you can handle that heavy load. Show you can, essentially prepare yourself to, the point where getting into PT school, where everything, of course, will be even more difficult. You'll have a lot more on your plate. It also will help you progress through your degree here in a timely manner so that you're more confident and comfortable when you're looking at your timeline and applying to PT school as well. Summer classes, it's up to you. You can do them. You don't have to. Doesn't really make a difference in the big scheme of things as far as PT goes, but unless you've got some situation where like you have to work full-time or something's a little different, you should be a full-time student in fall and spring. For your courses, I will reference again in a minute the required courses. But if you're applying to, let's say, University of North Georgia, and in addition to the required ones, they maybe have something that's recommended, look to see if that recommended course is something maybe you can take here, maybe you need a free elective with it, be intentional about that. If you have a way to work in those other pieces, it'll help you be more well-rounded, more competitive, more prepared, do it. If you don't, if it doesn't make sense for you, obviously that's a choice you can make, and that's still, that would be okay in the sense that you can't not have a required course. Problem there, But if it's something where a recommended course doesn't make sense for you and you don't want to take it, that's still okay in the sense that you're not immediately skipping something you can't get out of doing. But if you can be intentional with your free elective or a gen ed requirement, or if you've got upper level electives in your major that you can use intentionally to help you get into, some of those recommended courses for PT programs, make sure that's something you're doing. For GPA, typically 3.5 is what I recommend. That's based on, again, the review and a scope of different PT programs across Georgia and the U.S. as far as what they look for or what their last class profile reflected the GPA was for the students that were accepted. I've got noted there the prereq and overall cumulative. What I mean by that is they will look at your overall GPA, meaning that cumulative GPA is going to pull every attempt of every course you've ever taken, whether it was dual enrollment or KSU, or any other college if you take courses at another school. Maybe you went to grad school first, and are all going to be weighted together. And that includes, let's say, maybe you didn't do so well in a class, you got a D, you retook it, you got an A, both the D and A are going to pull. So that would be one GPA to look at. They're also going to look at the prerequisite GPA, meaning the courses here, and here, and here. I'll go back through them slower too. But those courses are also going to be weighted separately. So they're still going to be included in the overall, but they're also going to pull them out and see, okay, with your biology, your physics, your math, whatever else like that, what do those courses weight out to? They do not have to match those two GPAs, the prerequisite and the overall cumulative. Unless you are a 4.0 student, which is not most students, they won't match. And so if your overall cumulative is like a 3.82, maybe your ones that are just the required courses is like, a 3.70, those are not that different. That is not a red flag. If your overall cumulative, let's say, is like maybe, I don't know, a 3.51, and then the ones just the prerequisite courses is like, a 2.9. I don't know if that's mathematically possible, but for the purpose of the example, big problem. Those fundamental ones, the ones that are saying we needed a minimum as far as being prepared, which is why they're required, if that's the thing that you really struggle to get through, that doesn't indicate this is someone who's going to do really well academically when they're here in a PT program because they barely got through the undergrad courses that require, if that makes sense. So keep that in mind too. Speaking to these common course requirements, something that you want to think about is if you're looking at these and you're going, I'm not a strong science student, it is completely fine, and I highly recommend using tutoring. KSU has a variety of tutoring type services that are essentially free because you pay tuition and fees to anyway. And so you've got SI sessions, common study hours, of course your professor's office hours, Smart Center, study groups, people in your classes. PT school, Grace will like to say, like PT or whatever it might be, med or something else, they don't care and they won't know if the reason you got an A in Chem 1 is because you were at every SI session, did a study group every week, went to every office hour available, and that's how you got through the class because it's not your strongest, subject. They won't know the difference in that and a student who just happens to be good at chemistry and got an A without, doing any extra tutoring. So if it is something where you're struggling, but you're like, I want this is my goal, go to tutoring and do well in the course so that you can succeed and reach that goal. Cheryl, did you have a question?
Yes, my question is, back in 2022, I took Bio 1107, Biological Principle 1, and without lab, so are you saying I should go back and take lab for Principle 1 and 2 as well?
I think if I heard you correctly, you said you got the lectures, Biology 1107 and 1107, but you don't have the lab. Is that right?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
You need to take the lab, yes. So make sure that is something that you take. It's okay if you took that lecture already, but not the lab. Like, you can take the lab separate. You just couldn't, have the lab and then not the lecture. You know what I mean? Because they wouldn't let you register that way. So plan to go ahead and take the lab as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Same goes as far as the tutoring with your physics and everything, and then the statistics. Psych 1101, if you're my psych major in here, you're obviously way beyond covered with your psych content. But for my non-psych students, if you've not already done your social science gen ed requirement, you can do Psych 1101 to meet that requirement, so it's something you can actually complete a degree requirement with anyway. Questions so far?
Is biostatistics available online?
Actually, I'm really glad you asked that, because there's something I forgot to mention with this. Biostatistics, I think, is available online, which would probably be okay. Something that I do want to say, so thank you for asking that, Cheryl. Do not take your sciences online. That's a math, so it's different. But most professional health programs, whether it's PT, med, or something else, will not accept a science if it was done online. And so for your math, again, your psych doesn't matter online, hybrid, in person, don't care. But if you're in a biology, anatomy, physiology, chemistry, whatever it might be, make sure you are taking those on campus because you don't want to run the risk of them being like, well, it was online, it's not counted.
Makes sense.
All right, for shadowing. Yeah. So for shadowing, it does vary by school. You can check every program, but generally 100 hours is what you're going to find on average most schools are looking for. With your shadowing for PT, I've got to know that it varies by school. Check every website for the PT schools you're looking at. But typically they're looking at 3 different settings. And so that means maybe you shadow a physical therapist who works with, maybe like kids with like disabilities or something. Maybe you also shadow a physical therapist who, works with like maybe, geriatric population, or a physical therapist who works with folks who are recovering from surgery, different settings. And so, again, this isn't something where I know sometimes, like if you're a freshman or sophomore, you're like, do I need to start right now? You don't have to. You can if you've got the opportunity or the time or you want to. Depending on the timeline you're looking at applying to PT school, gap years are okay. That's totally fine. So if you're like, I was thinking about applying, but I have no shadowing, we want to plan on getting some shadowing for you, And so make sure that's something you're looking into and seeing how you can go ahead and get that, regardless of if you're a freshman or senior. But if you are a freshman or sophomore, it's okay if that's not something you started on yet. No need to rush right into it, but it is something you're welcome to go ahead and start looking for. I will have something before we finish, again, to track hours. I'll be sending it to y'all as well, a template you can use. So anytime you shadow or volunteer somewhere or anything like that, you've got something you can easily use to start reporting all those hours, because you will need them when you apply to PT school. As far as, again, finding the shadowing, there's not like a shadowing program per se. So start with people you know. If you know anyone who's in physical therapy, even if maybe they're like an admin in an office or a PT assistant or something, where you can get connected with a physical therapist. Also, in this area, at least I know in the Kennesaw-ish area, but Metro Atlanta, I'm sure as well, there's a lot of PT offices around here. Going in person is totally fine. I'd say if you go in person, take a resume, and if you don't have a ton of experience, like in general at all, work experience yet, that's okay. Career planning and development on campus can help you at least go ahead and start putting together a resume with what, you've got. Maybe you did if you're a freshman or sophomore, like in high school, maybe you're volunteering, or you've got any work experience. It doesn't have to be health related. Maybe you worked in in a fast food place or something on campus. Not a problem. Just go prepared, be professional, and feel free to go and ask in person, for those questions like, hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm looking to be a physical therapist. Would you be willing to let me shadow you? Sometimes having that face to a name can kind of help open the door as well. Anna, did you have a question?
Yes. So since I'm a junior, I have been shadowing quite a lot. But I was just curious if schools prefer unpaid shadowing hours versus paid shadowing hours.
Awesome. Good question. So with that, so when you say paid shadowing, my guess is are you working in some capacity then in that office?
I plan in the future, but if it's not good to do a paid shadowing, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah. So no, I get what you're saying. So there wouldn't be paid shadowing, because honestly, at that point, if it was just purely shadowing, I think it would be running to an ethical thing if someone was paying you just to follow them. You know what I mean? But if it's something where it's likely you've got some sort of role in that office, then it's not just shadowing, it's a job you're doing, and that's great. You're still getting experience in a PT office in a work capacity, which is totally fine. And so it's not something where you're ever going to really find paid shadowing, because, again, that would be more of an ethics issue, because if it's just shadowing, it's literally, following that physical therapist around, observing what they're doing, things like that. You've got no role other than to observe. And so that wouldn't be something you would be paid for. But if it's something where you're working in an admin capacity, or that let you do something like a PT assisting or something, then you're an employee, and that's great. Whether that's because you're doing it on a volunteer basis or on a paid basis in a work capacity, it is still additional experience in a PT office, and so that's not a problem at all. It just shows you've got even additional experience you can speak to.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, alrighty. With volunteering, so with this one, it's not something where I'm like, you gotta have volunteering here, you need this number of hours. You should have volunteering ideally. One, it helps you be more well-rounded. Two, it gives you an opportunity to show who you are, what interests you, what makes you different from all the other hundreds or thousands of PT candidates, depending where you're applying. Consistency is the big key. And so if you are looking for, where to volunteer, find something that you like, something you're passionate about, something you care about, somewhere you can get plugged into on a regular basis. That does not mean you have to go volunteer, at an assisted living facility, 3 days a week, every single week, all the time, if that doesn't work for you. Maybe you love the idea of helping with elderly people and volunteering, but maybe for you it makes more sense, maybe 1 day a week, but you do it every single week pretty much, and you do that over the course of 2 or 3 years. That's consistent. They're not looking to see that you spent 50 hours over the course of a month, or 100 hours or something like that. But how did you consistently give back of your time? What was it? That's not the thing that you're graded on as far as what you chose to do. It's like, who are they and how did they choose to spend their time? What does that tell us about them? Not in like, are they better than someone else? But so we know who they are. So they get to know you, what makes you different than all the other candidates. And so if for you, your heart is, I always use the example of animals. If you love animals, you not want to be that, and that's fine. But if you just love dogs, you're volunteering. Look at Mostly Mutts, which is like 5 minutes from campus. You can volunteer and walk dogs. Look at Humane Society, Again, if you love helping with elderly people, or, if they all seem like grandparents to you and that just, warms your heart, volunteer at assisted living facilities, play bingo with them, just sit with them, talk with them, If you want to help with the homeless, we are in the Metro Atlanta area, there is, of course, a need, a lot of ways to do that. If it's a certain group or certain type of individuals, maybe working with kids with disabilities, there are a lot of places you can help with that. So just look for something that makes sense for you because it's something that you care about, something you want to get back on your time. Another thing sometimes I'll forget to mention, but I get questions, so I try to remember to mention it as often as I can as well, is sometimes students don't think like volunteering at like either a church or like a temple or anything like that, counts. If you volunteer with your faith-based organization, that definitely counts. And some people are like, how do I know if it counts? I'm like, are you giving back of your time? Is it for free? You're volunteering. That's how you know it's volunteering. And so if it's something you're doing there, that's great. It just shows another facet of who you are. Again, you don't have to have that. But it is okay if you have it and you didn't think you could use it. That can be used as well. These are just a few examples. Again, you do not have to do any of these. You can do several if you find a couple that sound awesome to you. These are all directly linked, so again, you'll have access to this. The reason I have these particular ones on here is either I've had a ton of KSU students or some mention it, so I throw it on here. Or it's in the remotely close to us area, so I put it on here, And all these link directly to their volunteer page or to their college volunteer page as well. A couple of these are like resource hubs, things like Volunteer Match, or where is it? I think I've got the KSU, maybe Give Pulse website. Yeah, the very top on here, where you can pull like, put in your interest and they'll pull different things for you from across the area. But again, Google is great, honestly. You've got a lot you can have access to on there as well. Or if there's something in particular you maybe did when you were younger in high school or in the summer you want to look for doing again, go for it as well. Questions on anything with volunteering so far? Clarification? Has anyone done any volunteering since high school?
This is not like a question, but for example, if I want to volunteer for Northside Hospital,
yeah.
What is exactly what the people of the hospital is putting you to do?
Yeah, that's a good question. It does depend. In general, I'm just going to say with hospitals, whether it's Northside, Wellstar, Piedmont, Emory, depending on either the unit or the place in the hospital, it could be anything from patient transport, to, I know that one I hear about a lot, maybe to volunteering in the gift shop, to volunteering, as an extra hand if they need maybe a particular unit where they don't need necessarily like a certified health employee, but just, someone to kind of manage things, as they go from different folks or, again, kind of like transport. But the one I've heard with students the most is transport, but also it could be anything from like maybe admin role in like a unit, where they need assistance. It does depend truly on the hospital and the unit really kind of breaks down to that. So if it's something where you're interested in volunteering at Northside, but you have something specific in mind, you can break down like on that page, like they may have you start with the form and then talk to you about what you have an interest in. Or like Emory, for example, when you click on it, they kind of break it down by like, I think Emory, what is it like? There's like 3 different, like even like children's hospitals within it. I cannot remember the names of all of them. Eggleston and a couple others. And then from there, you've got additional things you would do, to complete the volunteer interest form. So it varies based on the unit in the hospital. So if it's something where you're open to it, but you're not sure what you'd be doing, just go ahead and start the process. Look into the information specific for Northside on here and see what you can find, because I guarantee there's a lot of different options you've got, but you probably won't know what they all are until you at least get to the second step of volunteering form.
Yeah.
Does that kind of help a little bit?
Yeah, that helped me a little. Yeah, that helped me a lot because I would like to, I'm doing exercise science, but I would like to be like in sports therapy that has to be with sports.
Yeah.
Too.
Awesome. No, I think if you've got a place on that form or something, you can mention that as well. Because I'm sure there is a need. I think it's worth mentioning for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Cheryl, did you have a question?
To add on to that, I didn't know hospitals can accept someone without yet finished a bachelor's degree to hold such position?
Well, it's a volunteer position, yeah. So, like, they even have, if you have friends maybe who did it, you might have heard volunteer. You know, they have volunteer programs in a lot of hospitals. I know my sister, she's an ICU nurse now. She's the academic one. She's got 3 degrees. Anyway, but, you know, she's an ICU nurse. I know even when she was in high school, she did volunteer at, like, Wellstar Kennestone. And so, you know, they have volunteers. They accept everywhere from, like, 16 through college students, through adults that are, like, you know, young adults to older adults. So depending on, you know, where you're at in life, whether you're a teenager or a college student or an adult, you know, that may also possibly indicate what kind of things you can do as a volunteer. I know she did everything from, like, she did it for several years in high school before ever starting college. I think she was on, what is it? Something, I remember there's something, several different units. At one point she did something, it was something with a GI unit. I think she also was a volunteer maybe in, like, labor and delivery or mother maybe at some point. But, of course, you're not a nurse or doctor. But my point is, like, there's a lot of ways that you can use volunteers of different ages, you know, and so you don't have to be, like, certified health professional. You're not a paid employee, but there's such a need that you've got options within a hospital for volunteering. So, yeah, definitely look into it. Like I said, if it's something you're considering, but you didn't know you could look into, I think I try to make sure I've got them up to date. Every healthcare system that's in at least the metro area on this page. And so you'll find between, again, Emory, Grady, Northside, Piedmont, Wellstar. I think I missed one. Anyway, they're all on here, so you can look for those as well. VA healthcare system as well. So, great questions. Any other questions before we move on? Alrighty. And I'm looking at the time, and I want to make sure I have time for questions, so I'm going to go kind of quickly through the last couple ones. But is anyone involved in any KSU student clubs right now? It doesn't have to be one on this slide, just in general. Any clubs or Greek life or honors college? I know at least I think Cheryl mentioned she is. Honors college. Are you an athlete? Anything like that? Any KSU involvement?
I'm also part of the honors college.
Is that Anna? Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
So 2 honors students. Anyone else? Any sort of KSU involvement? Okay. So I do recommend to students to get involved in something, whether it's a KSU club or I know honors college, you'll have activities and different things that you'll have additional opportunities to do, not just like with the academics and classes. And so, you know, it's something where you can get plugged in. It's good for you as a student, one, because it kind of helps in those times where maybe you're less motivated, you know, where things are, you know, you've got a lot on your plate to kind of have folks you can connect with that have shared interests or shared goals. And so that's why I mentioned it. Like, I always throw these on here as an example, but you don't have to do anything if you don't want to. Like, not a problem. There's like 400 KSU clubs right now, and so everything from like, you know, special interest groups to people that have this hobby to people that just like this kind of thing, you know, and of course we've got health related ones. And again, I'll be adding pre-pharmacy because that one I worked with a student today. She's starting that one, so it'll probably be active next semester. I made a quick note on this when we started, but you'll see there's no pre-PT club right now. The pre-pharmacy student, again, starting it for spring, so you saw the process, she's beginning it now. Pre-optometry, I helped students start that. It got started this semester. So there is a kind of, you know, thought for you. If you love the idea of looking for leadership and finding a way to kind of help bring PT students together and connect pre-PT students, you can totally start a pre-PT club at KSU, and I'd be happy to help with that process as well. So if it's ever something you're considering or you like the idea, if you're not sure what it's involved with or how you get it going, what you would do as a pre-PT club, you can always reach out to me as well, and I'm happy to talk to you about, again, it would be a great way to show leadership and give other students like yourself a place to connect on campus, you know, to, you know, study for different things like coming up for PT or bring in folks from PT schools if you wanted to arrange some of those too. You know, I know I've got some I do, but, you know, maybe you find a bunch of people in pre-PT club really want to look at applying to the, you know, Brunau's PT program, you know, so you see if you can arrange Brunau to visit, you know, so you've got a lot of different opportunities. So you don't have to start it. I just wanted you to know it's an option in case you're ever curious. So. Other requirements, GRE is required by many programs. I have many, not most, because there are some that don't. So make sure you're looking at that. For those of y'all that don't know what the GRE is, it's like the test essentially, and so it's SAT with the college level, like in a nutshell. It really kind of is set up the same way, and so that would be something you would take before you would apply. Of course, you'd have to have like some time to study for that, several months at least. But if you're not looking to apply like in the next cycle, you don't need to worry about it yet. Leadership, I already mentioned this a couple different times. Highly recommend if possible. whether it's through a student organization or maybe like if you've got, I don't know, volunteer coordinator at maybe somewhere you volunteer at because you spend a lot of time there and you've taken on like a lead volunteer role. A lot of ways to get it. I just always use the clubs as an example because a lot of opportunities, obviously, a lot of student clubs, so that's a great way to look for like maybe a senior year, junior year, applying to be president or vice president or secretary or something. Undergrad research experiences abroad, not at all required. I just mention it because occasionally I get questions. So if it's something you're looking into, there are definitely opportunities for both, but you do not have to do either at all ever if you don't want to. Tracking experiences. So this is the spreadsheet I mentioned. I'll be sending to y'all. My goal is by tomorrow afternoon. I'm a little behind in sending it my last couple presentations because there's been a lot of events over the last week and a half from Free Health, but I'll make sure you have it by tomorrow afternoon. This is just a screenshot of it. So I'll be sending this to you, and you can use it to track all of your experiences. For example, healthcare work experience as pre-PT students, you may not use it as much. I know, like, if you're a pre-med student, you're going to live on this tab, because you'll be working for healthcare experience. But shadowing is one y'all will use more heavily. You'll see it down there. It looks exactly the same, basically, on every tab. Volunteering, there's separate tabs for healthcare and non-healthcare. You don't have to use both of them. If you only have one of them, that's not a problem. Sometimes it makes it easier for students to have them listed separately for like either peace of mind or organization, so there's separate tabs. And then there's a couple more that are kind of hiding, like undergrad research if you do it, if you want to log that, other experiences. Quickly reviewing on these columns, it's like it appears, date, time frame, total hours, and the reason for that is because when you're applying to PT CAS, the Physical Therapy Central Application Service, when you're getting ready to do that, you're going to need all these hours totaled up, because they're going to ask how many hours of this, what'd you do this year? What's your, who's your person that, would essentially like be proof you did this, which is why I have it all laid out like this. The what did you do or observe column, that's not something you need a book or a novel going into. That's some quick notes. Unless you did a lot of different things that day, go for it. But, if it's just a couple things, like I shadowed this PT, they're working this population, I observed this specific case that was really interesting, whatever, make some notes. The reflection column is not an everyday column. You'll be required to write a personal statement or a letter of interest or whatever they call it. I think it's referred to as a personal statement for PT school to submit with your application. That one, you really want to put everything you got into that because not everything into that is in like submit 10 pages, but that's your opportunity. Your really one opportunity for them to, as I put it, hear you, They're going to have their facts on you, like the data, like your numbers, your hours, your grades, but that's a chance for you to essentially, close as you can get to speak to them, to kind of tell them who you are and why you want to be a physical therapist and why this is important to you, with the hopes that that will then lead to, and all the other stuff, maybe an interview. And so things like the reflection column are for the moments that really stand out to you or have an impact on you in whichever capacity it might be, whether it was while shadowing or volunteering somewhere or doing undergrad research or being involved in an experience through a student organization on campus or whatever it might be. So if you have one of those moments, where it had an impact in some way, shape, or form, or you want to remember because it was really important to you, make sure that is a super detailed entry, whether it's what you saw, what you thought, what you felt, what you observed, why it was important to you at the time. Because, years from now for some of you, or maybe more recent, the next year or so for others, you're going to want to have all those details. So when you're writing a personal statement, you can pull from those, things that you found that were the impactful moments and see if that's something you want to put in there. You'll have so many experiences at that point, you will not remember all those little how you, what you thought, saw, felt, why at that moment it was important, which is why you need to have those details so that you can pull from that to write your powerful personal statement. I recommend saving this to like a Google Drive or OneDrive so you can always easily access it from everywhere, like your phone, your laptop, or anything like that. So if it makes it quick and easy to throw, what you did that day in for, your quick what did you do, observe, and the hours you worked, you're able to do that. Okay, cool. We're doing okay in time. So, that was all I wanted to cover with PT today. Do y'all have any questions?
In my case, it's not like a question, it's just that right now, I'm commuting,
Okay.
and there are some things some emails that I have about being in some meetings or programs. So how can I like be involved with some of that stuff, even when I'm commuting?
Can you give me an example?
I don't know. For example, be with one of that groups or clubs, even knowing that I that I'm even know that I'm commuting.
Like
being
campus
involved,
events, you mean?
yes, being involved with that groups or clubs.
Okay, so with some of those things, it depends. So is it something where like you're commuting, but also like are you working while you're in school? So when you're on campus, it's just for classes and you leave again or something?
Yes, I'm just in school for classes, and after that I leave.
Okay. Do you work while you're in school?
Wait, what?
Like,
What
do you have a job? Do you have a job in addition to school?
No, right now.
Okay. All right. So I would recommend, depending on your commute, if it's like, hours, and occasionally, which is super unfortunate, I know a lot of students, like, if that's the case, I would not recommend staying later. But if it's something where you're able to, maybe there's something, an event on the day you have a class already, or you can get here a little earlier, stay a little later, is what I recommend doing. Because it is difficult generally to be involved on campus, at least, if you are not, there's not a better way to put it, like, if you're not on campus, much, because typically that's where you're going to find those things. Occasionally, like this, you'll find there's some virtual stuff, but for your majority of your really kind of connection points and things, they're going to be events on campus. So how far away do you commute from?
I'm commuting in Alpharetta.
Okay. I know one of my coworkers lives in Alpharetta, so I would say depending on your class schedule is, maybe for spring, if you're able to kind of look at that schedule and then just maybe make it work to stay a little bit later some days, or if coming up there's an organization you'd like to be involved in, if you can, if for spring they're probably going to be meeting this day of the week, go ahead and just make yourself a schedule so you can plan to stay later that day. But I will say you're not alone in the sense of commuting, especially at Kennesaw State. We've got a lot of commuter students from a variety of areas, either other side of Atlanta or, like yourself, kind of the other direction. But it's not too terribly uncommon for students to have a little bit of a longer commute. God, it's not worse. I had a student who said they were commuting from Carrollton the other day, and I was very concerned. But I know with traffic sometimes it's not ideal. But it is one of those things, unfortunately, it's just a spot where you're going to just have to kind of be comfortable staying later, and just you can use the time to study, even if it's between, classes, and then when that organization meeting starts, use that for homework and studying before you go to the meeting on campus or the event on campus. So,
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Cheryl?
You talked about recommendations, right? Just like any other graduate programs.
Yes.
So my question is, as a non-science major, as a psychology major, you would say it's always better to get it from someone who taught any areas within sciences, but not something like English or non-science.
So what you'll need to do is look at the PT schools you want to apply to, because they're going to tell you who they want the letters to come from typically. And so you'll see, one, do they just want one, or do they want three? And if so, it's usually going to be like, one should, like, you'll find at least one should come from physical therapist. And then I can't remember for PT school if it's two or three. I know there's usually where it says one at least from a physical therapist. But depending on the program, they may specify, like, we'd like to have one from a professor. Or it might say, it just might leave it open, like we want one from a physical therapist and the other, kind of you choose. But it does tell you, though, when you look at the admission requirements pages for each program, how many and who they want them to come from, or if there's something where they're kind of open and flexible on who you would choose to write it. And so use that as your guideline, because it does vary a little by school, at least for some of the letter.
Makes sense.
Any other questions? No? Any other last minute, like, clarification pieces or anything like that?
Besides honors college, I'm literally involved in no clubs because at this moment I'm not even on campus, so it's not even possible.
Okay, are you an online student?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I would just say keep in mind for upcoming semesters, if you need to take those particular sciences, make sure you're taking those on campus. But for other classes, if it's something where you wanted to do them online and that's what you prefer, technically you could, but the sciences should be done on campus. So, so those semesters, maybe the semester you're taking your sciences, maybe you're able to, if you want to get involved on campus, you could. But again, you don't have to. You've got honors college, so that's good because I know that gives you opportunity as well. So. I have a question for y'all before we wrap up. Since we have a few minutes, are there any PT schools already, as I'm trying to put together my spring schedule and add to it, that y'all are planning or hoping to apply to or attend? So it's something where if I'm able to do outreach or see if I can get them to visit campus, I'm trying to ask students to see who they want to see on campus so they can speak to them. So are there any PT schools you already know that you're open to or you're considering, or someone you'd like to see visit campus to speak to?
I've been thinking about Augusta, but I'm going to apply to several, but if I were to choose one, it'd be Augusta.
Oh. Are there any others anyone else has in mind in addition to Augusta? I mean, I'm open to I probably won't be able to book like 20, but if it's somewhere you're interested in, I will be glad to write it down and see if I can get them to arrange a visit. So.
I'm
I
personally.
will say North Georgia is one I tried to get, but it looks like it didn't work for their schedule, so I'll try for next fall. But any others?
About that, PT school programs that are that are PT programs in that colleges.
Okay. Sorry, can you explain?
The PT programs when you mention like Georgia Southern,
in Georgia.
That are the PT programs in that colleges.
Okay, so like the ones that we talked about earlier.
Yes.
Okay, got it. So it looks like maybe just if it's Georgia, that's kind of something you're hoping to stay in the state.
Yes.
Okay. I've got Augusta, original, at least one's in Georgia. And then Cheryl, did you have one as well?
Me personally, it's not PT but related. University of South Dakota, PhD in Health Sciences.
Okay. So that one, I don't know that I would be able to book, since it's not too much directly in my area, but it is something I will consider. What is the name of it?
University of South Dakota, PhD in Health Sciences.
Okay.
So what exactly does it do? Like, just because you let the representatives recruit KSU students by hosting an event, does it mean it also introduces to possible graduate school scholarship or, tuition waiver?
Yeah, so it's not so much that. This is more so because, I know it can be very difficult and not logistically possible for a lot of students to go and just tour and visit programs, whether it's med schools, PT schools, throughout the state. Y'all have schedules. It just doesn't make sense. And even with that, it's like, if you go, is there someone you can talk to that day? How do you even find out about the program? And so one of my things in my role as pre-health advisor is kind of giving y'all that opportunity by, as you can probably see through the events in our whole life, bringing med schools or PT schools or dental schools to campus, either to do a formal presentation about their program or to do like an information. Whereas those things, on a website, you've got very basic information. But when you actually have a real person, per se, who is in that program, as far as they've got their role in the admissions or the education capacity, they can answer those additional questions, or, help you find out more about it, even if you're like, I've never heard of you. Where are you located, And so that's one of the things with having different programs visit KSU. It gives you the opportunity to do those things that you normally wouldn't be able to have the opportunity to connect with a lot of these places. So. That's a good question. Let's see, any other PT schools? And then if not, we'll wrap it up. But I just want to make sure. David, did you have any? I don't think I heard from you yet.
I was looking at North or Augusta as well.
North Georgia? Okay. Then I think I got an email yesterday. So I've been trying for about a month to see if we can find something for spring. But I'll reach back out and see if maybe if I try later in the semester. Because we were working on a date early in the semester. So I'll see if I can find something maybe a little bit closer to April or May, because February didn't work out for her, to see if she can, come visit campus as well. Because I know that's usually one of the most popular ones I hear with students is North Georgia. So.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Alrighty, well, I will go ahead and wrap it up. But again, you are welcome to schedule an appointment or pop by for a drop-in if you have any questions. But thank you so much for attending today. Hopefully this was helpful, and y'all have a great rest of your afternoon.
Tabitha, I'm genuinely curious. So, like, I personally, because I did not apply, I don't know. Like, how do they? Oops. Do you hear me? How do they even know if you took which classes online? Because unless a professor who is writing my recommendation says she took it online, like there's no way to know.
I think I don't know the processes for sure, but I do know it is a general rule of thumb, whether it's med school, PT school, pharmacy school, that online sciences usually are not accepted. And so that's why I tell students, like, well, can I take online anywhere? How will I know? I'm like, the thing is, if you put something where you're not supposed to do it, it is a risk if you try. So that's why I like as a game. Also, another thing is online going to professional health. And so if you think about it with those things, they really are hands-on content and courses. And so, like I said, since they're typically not allowed online, you do need to be taking those in person. And so I would just make sure that's something you think about and plan for if you want to go to PT school, because one of those things, rather play it safe than sorry, So, does that help answer that question?
Oh yes, makes sense, because my reason for being online is because my home is literally more than 12 hours away, and so like,
are you in Georgia then, or are you somewhere else?
No, not even in Georgia. So like I've been taking like this to not enroll in a local university, but instead chose KSU, and then I took other than Bio 1107, I also took general education elementary statistics, 1401, and what else? I took psychological applications, Psych 3000, so that's a statistical psych class.
Yeah, and since you had Stat 1401, generally speaking, you're covered for your stats. You wouldn't need biostat probably. But what state do you live in?
I'm not living in the state.
Are you out of the country?
Mm-hmm.
What country are you in?
So how this happened is I got accepted to the
So are you still there?
Oh yes, this thing has been cutting off. So I've been with KSU and got accepted to the honors college, because even online, like if I can devote synchronous time, you know what I mean, I attend my honors college in real time. So like Zoom at set point 6:30 to 7:30, like that. And that's why I'm still a part of the honors college, and also
Yeah. So, but what country are you living in?
like I said, I'm out of country. That's what I'm saying.
Yes. Yeah. I'm asking, what country do you live in?
Oh, it's a private information, so.
Okay, well, the reason I was asking is because a lot of times with colleges, there's other colleges that you can look at that are nearby, and so that's why I was asking. So when I have students sometimes where it's kind of a weird situation where they're really far away, I'll ask them where they're living, because we can look at other options for taking courses like your sciences at a college nearby. So that's why I was asking.
Oh yes. So now I get your point. So basically, to enter some form of healthcare masters and PhD, I tailored my classes. I mean, even in online or synchronous modality, the ones that are science or math heavy. But then now that I know if your classes were taken online, then they're not really legitimate.
There's a good chance they might not accept them, so that's why I said I was asking. So so if you're not comfortable sharing your location, I would say you might want to consider looking at unfortunately without also knowing what country you're in, I'm not sure what the accreditation is like, but you might want to consider looking into that information then, since it's not something that I can help with, since I'm not sure where you're at. To see what the accreditation would be of colleges nearby, to see if you can take your sciences in person. The other thing is you would also need to check to see with the PT schools you're considering, since I guess you're considered an international student. So you would need to see what their requirements are, what they have, what their missions are for international students. Does that make sense?
Oh, so are you saying those with the U.S. visa and those with, who are not U.S., I mean, for example, refugee or alien or, those kind of students have a harder time getting into PA programs?
I'm saying I don't know. That's why I was saying you need to ask the PT schools, because I don't know their policies. I typically work with students who are in Georgia or in country, and so I'm familiar, with kind of like what the typical admission requirements are. But as I'm saying, I don't know what, if it's for international, because I work primarily with, students who are like in residence in state. And so I don't know if it is an international thing. I just have no idea. I'm clueless to that. Like, I have no background experience or expertise. And so I just wanted to make sure you're aware that it's something I can't help with. You want to make sure you're checking with the programs if it is something like an international situation, to see if they have different requirements, because if they do, I would not know what they are.
Besides PT and OT, I also looked at many different program websites for online MPH, because MPH is related, and also because I took most of the prerequisites.
Okay, so you need to check, because I don't know a lot about, because I know the one you asked about South Dakota, because I don't generally work, like I was saying, with PhD programs, because I do pre-health devising. I know it's health science, but I don't really do a lot with PhD programs, and so like I said, you need to check with them on that as well.
Makes sense.
So is there anything else I can help you with today?